Hi everyone, it's Alicia and welcome back into my kitchen. Today's recipe is going to be for crock pot Irish potato soup, and this recipe is my own invention. I basically looked up various versions of this soup and Frankenstein's together the best elements from a couple that I found. So yeah, this is my take on crock pot Irish potato soup. And to go with it, I'm going to be making a delicious loaf of homemade Irish soda bread. That recipe comes from Bigger Bolder Baking. I will link her channel below. She is amazing. All of her recipes are fantastic, and I'll be showing you how to make her soda bread. So you'll be getting two recipes for the viewing of one in this video. And it feels fun that I'm making Irish potato soup today because I just got back the results of a DNA test I submitted to ancestry.com, and some things I already knew, like being Swedish on my maternal side. My maternal grandfather's grandfather, so my great-grandfather, was Swedish, as in born and raised in Sweden and then came to the States, but I already knew that. I grew up hearing stories about his journey here, and in fact that was one of my main motivations to go to Sweden. In the summer of 2013, I studied abroad in Sweden for 6 weeks as a college study abroad student. I lived in Lund and it was a fantastic experience. I've been wanting to go back ever since. Sweden's a lovely country and all the people there are really nice, at least they were to me. So I knew about that ancestry, and being Mexican and indigenous peoples, both from the first peoples of North America and Mexico and South America on my biological father's side. I know I don't look it at all, but I do have those ancestries, and I already knew those things, but there were also some surprises in the test results. For instance, a lot of the percentage of my ancestry came from other places in Europe: England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, a lot of places that, from what little I know of their history, those tribes or cultures who didn't necessarily get along very well, but obviously some of them got along because some of them eventually made me. And all the people, we all eventually exist because of various loves and couples that came together. That's a good sign of hope for what's going on in the world, even with all the geopolitical crap that goes on. Individual people don't always pay attention to that. So yeah, a bunch of ancestries from the British Isles, and if you do ancestry.com, they break down what percentages that they found. So I think the first biggest percentage of mine was Northwestern Europe, and then the British Isles, and then Swedish. And also I've got some Italian in me, so that's really neat. And again, they break down, they show with maps the different regions where your ancestors came from, and you can then dive in further and look up the actual people and records and stuff. So yeah, I've got a lot of ancestries I didn't even know about that I'm gonna get to research now. That'll be super fun. So that will open up a whole bunch of doors for looking into different foods, and from a spiritual perspective, the different indigenous cultures of those regions, because I think that looking into your own historical family background is a good way to see what traditions and gods call to you. But I don't think that's the only path. Some people get so focused on that perspective that they then get into pagan nationalism, or nationalism that's supposedly inspired by paganism, but it's really just them being racist assholes. Your own ancestry is a good springing off point, but it's not the only path. But since I now have all these new traditions and ancestries to look up, I get to look up all these new things that I didn't know about, including the food. So with that, let's get to making this delicious Irish potato soup. And here I have the vegetables for the soup. I have 5 large russet potatoes, 3 stalks of celery, 2 green onions, and 2 carrots. And the first order of business is going to be to peel and slice all of these and to put them in the crock pot, and then to add the rest of the first round of ingredients that will go in and help the soup cook all day. Here are all the veggies of the crock pot, all those potatoes and celery and carrots and green onion. I chopped them all up and there they are. You'll want to cut them in small pieces, but especially with the potatoes you want to cut them into cubes, because later on when the soup's cooked you're going to mash some of them to help make the soup all creamy and potatoey and yummy. And the next step is to add in a mix of seasonings. This is salt, pepper, parsley, cayenne pepper, some caraway seeds, and there's also a bay leaf in there. So I'm going to sprinkle the seasonings in and then add in some cooked bacon. I buy pre-cooked bacon, but if you happen to have some bacon that you want to fry up, you can do that too. I'll sprinkle in the seasonings and then tear up and add the bacon, and then add in 32 ounces or a quart of chicken broth. Pour in the chicken broth, and as I do, to be kitchen witchy, trace the pentacle. And circle around. Blessed be. Here we go. Here are the veggies with the seasonings and the bacon and chicken broth all mixed in. Now if you wanted to make this vegetarian, you could obviously leave out the bacon and use vegetable stock instead. And now all that's left to do is cook it. So here on goes the lid. There we go. And usually I cook this on low for 8 hours, but it's getting kind of late to do that. It's almost noon. I'm going to try cooking it on high for 6 hours and see how that turns out. All you do now is just turn on the crock pot to whatever setting you want to use and let the vegetables cook in the broth, and then we're going to add in a mixture that will help thicken up the soup. The crock pot soup is almost done. It's been in the crock pot for about 6 hours, and I'm going to check it and see if the vegetables are soft enough to move on to the final step of preparing it. But before I do that, I'm going to get the Irish soda bread going, so that way it should finish around the same time as our soup, so we will have nice, warm, fresh out of the oven bread to enjoy with the soup. So let's get started. Here are the ingredients for the dough for the soda bread. In this bowl I have the dry ingredients, which are a mixture of flour, salt, baking soda, and a few tablespoons of cold butter that I rubbed in with my fingers until the mixture resembled breadcrumbs. In this bowl I have some buttermilk mixed in with 1 beaten egg. I didn't have actual buttermilk, so I just made my own with regular milk and some lemon juice. And here we have some rolled oats that we're going to sprinkle on the top of the bread. So once you mix up the dry and wet ingredients separately, you're going to add the wet ingredients to the dry. And here is what my dough looks like after I mixed it all up. It's all at the bottom of the bowl in one big round mass of dough. And a sign that you'll know that the dough is done is if when you mix it, if all the ingredients come away from the sides of the bowl to pretty much clean it out. So there shouldn't be anything really stuck to the sides or any of the dry ingredients just kind of sitting still on the sides of the bowl. So once the dough looks and feels like this, you're going to want to transfer it to a floured work surface and shape it into a round that's 1.5 inches thick and is 8 inches by 8 inches. And that's the great thing about Irish soda bread, is that you don't need to knead it. You just need to shape it into the round loaf of bread. And here is what my loaf looks like all shaped. I transferred it onto a floured baking dish because that's what he's gonna bake on. And now here comes the fun part where we get to decorate it. The key look of Irish soda bread is that it has a cross in it. And obviously with modern connotations, most people would associate the cross with Christianity, but the cross also appears in other traditions, and particularly in Wicca, the cross can stand for things like the crossroads, which is symbolic of different directions and choices in life, or the 4 physical elements, or the 4 seasons of the year. So basically, the cross can represent whatever it means to you, even if that just means it makes the bread look pretty. You could also say a blessing. So for me, as a Wiccan who worships both the goddess and God, I'm just improvising off the top of my head. Lady and Lord of the Crossroads, bless this bread of flour and oats. Kind of rhymed. And not all Wiccan pagan prayers have to rhyme, but I think it's kind of fun when they do. Now the bread has been blessed. Try saying that 3 times fast. And now, this is traditional with making Irish soda bread. You have to poke a hole in the corners that are made with the cross, because there are little mischievous fairies out there who might try to sabotage your bread. So we want to release the fairies, which just shows that pagan traditions in Ireland never really died out. Sorry, St. Patrick. They just got incorporated into the new ones when Christianity came along. Old and new wisdom can work together. So now that our bread has all the markings, we are going to glaze it with the leftover buttermilk mixture. This is why you don't throw it away. And don't throw any of your liquids away when making bread if it calls for a glaze. Don't waste a brand new egg just to make an egg wash. Use the liquid that's left over. And thank you, Gemma, for that little trick, which you in turn learned from your mom. So I'm gonna glaze the bread and then sprinkle over some rolled oats, a tablespoon of rolled oats to be exact. And here is the bread with the glaze on top and all the little happy rolled oats. And now I'm going to put him into the center of a 425-degree oven for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to turn the heat down to 400 and bake him for 30 minutes more, so a total of 45 minutes. And in the meantime, I will finish up the crock pot soup. This is the soup after 6 hours and after I've squished all the vegetables. You'll want to make sure that the vegetables are soft so you can mash them with a potato masher. Not too fine, you don't want to crush all of them, but just enough so some of the crushed potatoes will help thicken the soup. And here is what's going to thicken it even more. This is a mixture of shredded cheddar cheese, flour, milk, and sour cream. To finish the soup, you add this mixture into the soup, stir it up to mix it all together, and let it keep cooking for half an hour, which is perfect because my Irish soda bread has about 5 minutes left with its first baking phase, and so I'll just turn down the heat and bake it for its final 30 minutes, and dinner will finish with everything together. Yay! I sometimes don't finish all the components at the same time, so it's nice that the universe is letting it match up tonight. Thank you, Goddess and God. And here is our wonderful dinner all ready. The crock pot potato soup. It has gotten wonderfully thick and creamy, and it smells amazing. Over here is the Irish soda bread. I just took it out of the oven, so obviously I'm going to let it and the soup rest for a while because they would both be way too hot to eat now. But here's what the soda bread looks like. It's a wonderful golden brown, and if you tap it and it sounds hollow like that, you'll know that it's done. And of course, can't have an Irish dinner without one of these, or a couple of these, but of course I'm going to be starting with this one. Guinness makes everything delicious. It's honestly become my go-to beer for a while because it tastes rich and decadent and like you're really indulging, but the ABV isn't that much, so you can drink a lot of them. Good to take care of yourself and be responsible, even if you are drinking in your own home. So yeah, here is our delicious Irish dinner, and thank you for coming along with the recipes. I hope that you try them yourself and check out Bigger Bolder Baking for a lot of her recipes, including this delicious soda bread. Thank you for watching, and blessed be, and sláinte.